Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Blue Raider Podcast, hosted by Jake Bolden and presented by the Conseco Group General Contracting and Mighty Dog Roofing. Don't miss another Tuesday episode by subscribing to the podcast on all streaming platforms or catch our visual presentation uploaded every week on YouTube. Don't miss our next ticket giveaways by subscribing and following on all Blue Raider Podcast social media accounts on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Blue Raider Pod. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Raider Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Bolden, and in today's episode, I've got more hoops transfer portal news. Both programs get a commitment this last week, and we've got the tape for you here at the BRP. We're going to be talking all things you need to know about the two new additions and much more. Tennis just won their 6th straight Conference USA championship, so we'll highlight that in today's episode. And make sure you stick around. Noah Freeman, ESPN Plus play-by-play for the Middle Tennessee softball team, will be here as we will talk all things you need to know about Jeff Breeden's bunch. They've got 2 weeks left in the regular season, and it's getting to crunch time where they're trying to make that push for the Conference USA tournament berth. So Noah will be here to talk all things about the Lady Raiders. Baseball's got 3 weekend series left after a win on the road in Bowling Green. Didn't take the series, but still good stuff from them as we look forward to, again, a push for the Conference USA tournament. Before we get into today's episode, I want to take just a second to thank our sponsors, beginning with Mighty Dog Roofing of Nashville East. When it comes to your home, trust Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East for all your needs. As a veteran and locally owned business, we're honored to be one of just 11 Owens Corning contractors nationwide to win their prestigious service award. From roofing and gutters to windows and siding, our expert team delivers top quality craftsmanship and unmatched service. We're here to protect your home with pride and precision. Choose Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East, where excellence is a tradition. Call them today at 615-MD-ROOFS. That's 615-MD-ROOFS, or visit their website at mightydog-roofing.com. And thank you to the Conseco Group. Since 1987, the Conseco Group has been turning dreams into reality. Whether it's pre-construction consulting, construction management, design build, or renovations and improvements, we're here to exceed your expectations. At Conseco Group, we don't just deliver, we deliver with passion, precision, and unparalleled quality. Our hands-on approach ensures your investment is maximized and your vision is brought to life. From Clarksville down to Columbia and beyond, trust the Conseco Group to handle every detail with expertise and care. If you're ready to build your future, contact the Conseco Group today at 615-298-9907 or visit their website at consecogroup.com. Once again, thank you to Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East and the Conseco Group for sponsoring today's episode. Now, let's get into some of that hoops talk I was prefacing at the very beginning. 2 new signees for both of our teams, and I'm really excited about both of them. We'll kick things off with the men. If you're not already listening to us on YouTube, make sure you stop by because we do have some clips and highlights rolling from Mr. Marcus Whitlock Jr.'s season at Cowley Junior College in Kansas. The athlete that he is, this guy is going to fit in perfectly with the type system that Nick McDevitt likes to run. Plus, he has the scoring prowess to go along with it. One thing about this guy that particularly stood out on tape is he is listed at 6'3", but if you watch him, he just has a length and athleticism to him about it that he's dunking the basketball with ease, but I think more importantly, he can shoot the basketball with just as much ease. Shooting over 42% from three-point range, which is something that, again, you can never do without. But he averaged 16 points per game on one of the top 10 junior college teams in the country. His team actually made it all the way to the junior college equivalent of the Elite Eight this last year in postseason play. So to average 16 points per game, be the best player on a top 10 junior college team, again, that alone shouldn't go unnoticed. But where this guy fits in, as I tie this all back to where the roster stands as of today, he'd have to be almost a shoo-in at the 3 spot. At 6'3", he's not necessarily long enough to play the 4. I do think you're comfortable there with Kamari Lance, Tori Alston, one of those two that are going to be playing that position. But at 6'3", I think he's going to be the wing that we saw Justin Buford was, obviously with a lot more shooting touch than what we saw with Justin Buford. I don't have much tape to see where he is as a defensive player, much like what Justin Buford was. That was his role. But obviously, you're going to have a big shakeup at the 3 position with a guy like this. And you definitely needed it losing your scorers like Cam Weston and Justin Porter and Jalen Counter via the portal. So a guy like Marcus Whitlock Jr., MJ Whitlock, as I'm sure he'll be called, you definitely, it's a good ad for McDevitt and company. I look forward to kind of seeing how they're also able to supplement this loss at guard that they have. But great shooting touch, as I already said. He's a multi-level scorer. He can get downhill and get to the rim. But again, I think the 42% from three is something that is really what stood out to the evaluation of him. And one little tidbit too, the last junior college signee that Nick McDevitt had that averaged 16 points per game and shot over 42% from three was Justin Porter. I'm not going to say that he is Justin Porter 2.0. However, he has very similar numbers, and Cali is a much better junior college program than where Justin came out of Tyler, Texas. So I think that this addition, again, makes this team better already. Obviously, with the news of Jalen Counter officially committing to Davidson, the rumor that he may potentially return to MTSU in testing the waters is pretty much over with at this point, because now he's gone. It's a done deal. We don't have any news on where Weston's going or any news where Porter's going, although I can imagine that those guys are still testing out their waters. My understanding when it comes to Cam Weston is he's actually exhausted all of his eligibility. Not to say that there's a feather in the cap with what the NCAA is doing with the House settlement, what happens with junior college and all this stuff. But my understanding is he has exhausted all of his eligibility. So time will tell what we can and can't do in that regard of maybe bringing Cam Weston back. But with Javon Carter, your potential day one point guard starter, and now you've got your three guard. You got to fill that final shoe there at the two guard. I think you feel comfortable with Trey Green, a guy that's been a part of the program for a long time. And we obviously saw the leaps and bounds that he took this year on the shooting stroke as well as on the defensive end. So I think you kind of have your backcourt starters solidified with this addition, but you definitely want those depth pieces added. So I look forward to seeing what the program does in these coming weeks at adding depth there. I have come to think that maybe we're not going to see a big shift into getting other D1 players that'll fall from the P4 ranks. I do think we're going to be seeing guys, much like Sam had alluded to in a previous episode, that we may be finding other ways. Junior college is where we found MJ Whitlock. You might even find some guys overseas that have some eligibility that they can come over here and play a little bit older. But I think you're going to be turning over every stone you possibly can to piece together a good roster. So far, I like the two additions, but you still need help there in the backcourt as far as depth goes. And then I know a lot of you are asking about what they're going to do in the front court. I wish I really knew. I know that Loof is someone that they're very confident in and someone that has taken those leaps and bounds this last offseason. Obviously, didn't show up very well on the scoring end of things. On the offensive side, he still has a lot of growing up to do in that area. But I know that this staff is very confident in who Loof is and anticipate him to jump into that 20-25 minute role and potentially find someone that can supplement him in that other 15 to 20 minutes. And really, you don't need another Isam Mustafa, although it would be nice to get that guy, but that guy is hard to find in the portal nowadays, especially where we are 2 weeks since the portal essentially opened. So I wouldn't necessarily be expecting that big splash at the front court like we saw with Isam Mustafa. Not saying it's impossible, but if I had to guess, I think they're going to go in a little bit more unconventional route, maybe overseas, maybe stay in the junior college ranks, and maybe a guy that played some reserve minutes, much like we saw with Kamari Land, someone like that. That could happen, but I do think that would be less likely to happen versus someone overseas, junior college, maybe another mid-major role player type fill. So men have a lot to do. Obviously, a lot of roster spots still to fill. So look forward to seeing what they're able to do in these coming weeks. Now, on the Lady Raiders side, they got a huge commitment this last week in Elena Contreras, someone who I'm extremely excited about for a lot of reasons. She is a scorer. And again, if you're not tuned in with us here on YouTube, find us over on social media at Blue Raider Pod at X, Instagram, TikTok. And you can find this tape that we're showing here on the YouTube stream. But she can score without a doubt. She scored 17 points per game this last year at Missouri, Kansas City as a part of the Summit League. She was a second team all Summit League selection. But truthfully, I think she's robbed of the first team selection just due to the fact of her team wasn't necessarily that great. I believe they were middle of the pack there in the Summit League, but she's a big part of the success that they did have, averaging over 17 points per game, a 38% field goal shooter. She shoots 33% from three, but she takes a lot of shots. She averaged 17 shots per game. That's right, per game, which is enough for top 10 in the country. So the Roos relied on her heavily to shoot the basketball, and she can do it at all three levels. She is a great ball handler. She has mid-range potential. She has great shooting from the three. She obviously can get to the rim because she does also average six. She also averages 3 free throws per game, which doesn't speak volumes, but it is a significantly higher than what we did this last year from the point guard position. Something else too, at UMKC, she played a lot of the two guard, the shooting guard position, where I guess my question would be, where does she fit into the roster now? Because I think she has the ball handling potential to play the point guard role. And you have a point guard in Jada Harrison. You have one that's coming in Kirsten Verholz. But Contreras has this level of, obviously, she's a veteran. She's spent 2 years in Division I, played one season at junior college. So technically she's a senior. I don't know where she falls in the NCAA of eligibility. She potentially has 2 years because of the junior college season. I guess that's still to be determined, but she'll be coming in as a senior. But she has great ball handling. She could very well fit into the point guard position. She reminds me eerily similar to that of Savannah Wheeler. Same size, 5'6", can shoot the three. That's not necessarily her predominant shot. She likes to get down to the rim. Again, gets to the rim. She can fight through traffic, get to the free throw line. Again, very, very similar to that of Savannah Wheeler. Only difference is she's not necessarily as good of a free throw shooter, but getting to the rim and hitting those tough shots is kind of her forte. So where it sits today, I think she's going to be the starting point guard. I think they feel really happy that Savannah Davis is going to move into that 2 spot. I don't see Contreras taking the 2 spot and Davis being the point guard. So I think Elena goes to the point. You got Savannah Davis at the 2. I think they're still feeling their way through the 3-4 spot, potentially even the 5 spot. When you talk about the 3-4, you've got young players coming in. You got Blair Balgus. You've got Macy Pfeiffer, who would play the 4. You've got Emily Monson, who is the length of a 4, but has played the 3 a little bit. You got Gracie Hamby in reserve, who has also played the 3, also had some minutes at the 4. So you kind of have interchangeable players there. I do anticipate they have some visits coming this week for the Lady Raiders. I'd like to think that they're going to spend some time finding someone that can play that wing position, that Tamia. Now that she's in the portal, you got to find some replacement for her at the 3 spot. I know the Lady Raiders have some visits this week with transfer portal pickups potentially, so I look forward to seeing what they have in the coming weeks, but I think a lot of that attention is going to be put on finding that 3 guard that can take over Tamia's spot, and maybe even vie for playing time with Emily Monson, with Blair Balgus, with Macy Pfeiffer in some capacity there at that 3-4, and then finding that veteran center that can really help develop that youth that you have there at the 5 spot. Your centers right now, incoming freshman Nicole Dominguez, the 6'10" center from Spain. You've got Stacy Kaepernick that's coming back. She's a redshirt sophomore. And then you've got another freshman signee, Jenna McClendon, that could also play the 5. A lot of youth there, a lot of inexperience. So maybe you can find someone in the portal that can, again, fill that void of a veteran presence, help those players develop. And scoring would be pivotal, but even just length in this league in general, the length at the 5 spot is huge. Your 2 best teams in the conference, Bella Smuda and Anastasia Boulder-Ravel, were the center for those 2 teams. So if you just have length, 6'5", 6'4 plus, you're going to be doing pretty well in Conference USA. But to break through for this team on that next level past Conference USA, that length is very paramount to that success. But I think in the grand scheme, as young as this team is going to be next year, having a veteran presence is going to be huge now that you don't have Tamia on the roster. So I think that they'll be able to supplement that well with a big post that has a lot of minutes under her belt. So again, stay tuned there with those players visiting this week. I think we should expect hopefully some commitments this week, or maybe a change in direction. We'll certainly find out by next week's episode. So stay tuned for that. And of course, gomiddle.com. I run the Lady Raiders recruiting board there for the transfer portal, as well as any high school stuff that's opening up as that starts to heat up this summer. So make sure you're tuned in there if you're not already. But now, before we get into our interview with Noah Freeman, I want to take just a second, too, also to really highlight men's tennis, Jimmy Borndame, what they were able to do this last weekend. They've had a rough go of it. They haven't been necessarily the star power that you are used to seeing, but they have fought through it, and this team absolutely dominated this last weekend. Not only did they win their sixth straight Conference USA championship. They went to Lynchburg, the team that was supposed to be competing with them this year for the conference championship, and took them to town 4-0 in the championship game. Again, so much admiration for what Coach Borendame has done with that program to win 6 straight. Again, a lot of us were stunned when we got to 3 and 4 and now 5 and now 6. It's incredible. I look forward to hopefully having Coach Borendame on in the coming weeks to talk about this season that he's had, because it's something to be studied. It's been a tough go for him, but I'm so I'm proud to be a Blue Raider fan, especially for that men's tennis program. They do so many things right. And again, this team, it should not be slept on. I know they haven't had the big marquee wins that maybe we're used to. They've had big wins, but I know Coach Jimmy would be one that would be very critical of them. But this team could certainly do some damage upcoming. So I look forward to what this team is going to do in the coming weeks as they get more into postseason play. But big hats off to Coach Borendame and the Blue Raider tennis program on 6 straight Conference USA championships. Just something that, again, unheard of. We'll take a short commercial break, and then we'll be back with Noah Freeman to talk Lady Raiders softball.
The BRP is proudly partnered with Rivals Network affiliate GoMiddle.com. Subscribe for premium content for all the inside scoop on MTSU athletics, recruiting, or join our free forums to discuss today's episode and all things Blue Raiders. The BRP is also partnered with the College Huddle, a nationwide collaborative effort with over 80 Division I programs represented. Check out the website at thecollegehuddle.com to catch up on all college football content with daily articles and episodes provided by the largest college podcast community on the internet.
Now joining us on the Blue Raider podcast, he is a journalism and sports media major at MTSU, as well as a student assistant for the athletic communications. But you may know him as the ESPN Plus play-by-play for the MTSU softball program. It is Noah Freeman. Noah, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be on here. Super excited to get talking.
Absolutely, Noah. Well, I brought you on for one thing in specific, and that's to talk softball, but I can't do that right now because you're a Thunder fan amidst all this NBA playoff stuff. You've got Grizzly fans all in the mid-state, and you are a boisterous Thunder fan.
Of course. I mean, I put it out there as much as possible. If you see the social medias, it's everywhere. Since I was a little kid, it's just what I got into watching YouTube growing up, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook. So from then on out, it's just been loyalty. I love it. I live and breathe Thunder basketball.
I wish I could do a little bit more trash talking, but after game one, I think I'll silence it for now. But Noah, let's get into the meat and potatoes here, talking softball. Really an unfortunate weekend for the ladies. They dropped 2 of 3 to Jack State. Really thought this is a week that they could make a bigger push there into the Conference USA tournament berth. You were there on action there at the softball complex. What'd you see from the ladies?
It was just dominance by Jack State for the most part. I mean, they scored 23 runs on 32 hits, I think, over the series. I mean, they were just seeing the ball really, really well. And we were a home run hitting team. We had 3 in that first game and none in the last 2, which is just not common for us. And so I think it was more dominance by Jack State than lack of performance by MTSU. They did really well in the circle as well, had some good pitchers. But that first game, we looked really nice with that 9-6 win. Addie Edgman had a 2 home run game. Julia Garcia went deep as well. Um, that second game, the mercy rules really what hurt. 5 innings, 12-2 win for Jack State on 14 hits, and just 2 hits for them, for the Blue Raiders, just really slow. But they've got 2 more series left, and I think they'll be able to put up a fight to make it into the tournament in Bowling Green.
I've been saying this for the last couple weeks that this team has the makings to be dangerous. Obviously, you don't beat Liberty on sheer accident. You know, obviously the dominance that they've been, and you went to Lynchburg and won that matchup. You won a big series on the road against Western Kentucky, or excuse me, at home against Western Kentucky. Now you've got 2 more series against, I would say, lesser opponents that you've got to make do. We talk about that upcoming schedule. This weekend, they're in Las Cruces against New Mexico State, who's currently ranked 8th in Conference USA. And then that following weekend, they're back home against UTEP, who is the 9th place team in Conference USA. I don't necessarily get too much into the weeds about that right now, but what is it that's missing? Like you said there, the home runs, like that has kind of been their mainstay this year, 23 straight games with a home run. They're pretty dominant in that stretch, but when the big fly is not flying, this team just seems to be so quiet at the plate.
I think a lot of it is they really feed off of momentum. I mean, they've got some games without home runs this season. They went on a 23 game streak earlier in the year, and then it ended in a game against WKU. And it's a really like close knit team. They're all friends. They all feed off each other's energy. And sometimes when they don't have that momentum, you can kind of see across the board. Like you got the players, they're swinging their own bats. You know, somebody else is not swinging their bat for them, but just the way the game goes, the momentum can be thrown off by the rest of the team sometimes. So if they're not connected, sometimes it's just they can't get hits to go. And they've only got four pitchers. I mean, they've got four solid pitchers, two really good starters consistently over the year, but it's not a deep rotation there, and it can get kind of tough for them.
We had Layla Amon on last week, and obviously she's been a special talent this year. You always kind of can pencil her in for a really good battle, if not a win, on that first matchup on Friday. They've been throwing her there on the third matchup on the back end of the weekend. But you run out of bullets, and like you said, sometimes it just can't get it. One arm can't carry a in college, much like it can in high school. But Layla's been a special talent. I guess they're going to have to really use her as much as they possibly. I know they feel good with where Mary Martinez is and where Tori Kaufman is, but Layla, I mean, it seems talk about feeding off momentum when she's hot. That is a tough team to stop.
Yeah, I mean they've got Martinez, they've got Jazine Espinal as well, but neither of them really start too often. Kaufman and Heyman take all the starts. So you see a 3 game series. It's maybe Layla game one, game two is Kaufman, and game three is likely Layla again. You see, Mary and Jazine come in, middle of the game, late of the game, whenever they're needed. And, the pitchers do well, but it's just, it kind of takes a toll on you just having to repeat again and again and again. You got to change these game plans up so fast. And with the series, if you're pitching twice in a series, a team can figure out in game one and be ready for you in game three, which Jack State was getting the win in the third game of the series.
Yeah, it's much like the baseball where they say, you don't want to face a lineup two times. That's why normally in major league games, they only go 5 inning starters nowadays because that third rotation, the numbers drastically change. So I couldn't imagine what softball is like where that turnover, again, you've seen the same pitcher twice in 3 days. Certainly is a disadvantage as it is a pitcher sport, but we've seen that kind of play out. But let's get into the conference slate here. I know they have the much easier schedule ahead for them. It's a tight race. They've got to finish in the top 6. They're a half game out of being in the top 6, but even crazy enough, they're only 2 games out of being in third place. So really, in a perfect world, you sweep, things go your way. You could end up all the way up into third place comfortably in Bowling Green. But I guess I'm going to voice this question to you first. What needs to happen? Besides winning 6 straight games, what needs to happen for this team to be comfortable and get into Conference USA tournament?
Like you said, a 6-0 sweep is not only possible, but I mean it would help them a lot. You've got 2 of the bottom 3 teams in the conference, but it's also a very close conference. We could end up as all the way up as the second, third seed, but also be the second to last team, depending on how the season goes. And I think it's just got to be a ride of momentum. I mean, we hit a lot of home runs, but we don't have a ton of hits. We got to start, getting those singles through the middle. And the top lineup has been great hitting this year. And I think the bottom lineup, although they've been really good, they don't walk as much. If they could draw walks or get on base just even more at the end of the season because they've got good production, just not as good as people like Addie Edgman and Macy Harder, Jana One. If you get base runners on for those 3 at the top of the lineup, that could be really efficient for the Blue Raiders to score more runs.
Absolutely. Well, again, reiterate that schedule at Las Cruces this weekend, and then next weekend they'll be back home for that final series. I know that they have a non-conference game tonight, Tuesday, when this episode airs, against Tennessee State, just kind of a fine-tuning game for all intents and purposes, but big one down the stretch. Like I said, got to finish in the top 6. Their opposition, Western Kentucky, who is a half game ahead of them. They've got FIU on the road and then Jack State, and then on FIU, flip side, the other team that's 1 game ahead of Lady Raiders have Western Kentucky at home, and then they have to go all the way to Lynchburg for their final weekend. So even from a scheduling perspective, it is in your favor with those teams that you're chasing down. They have a much tougher schedule ahead of them. Another thing, too, that I really added in as far as what needs to happen is coming to it, and you touched on it, home runs. I always say correlation doesn't equal causation, but this is a statistic that I couldn't ignore. You have 15 games this year where they haven't hit a home run, and those 15 games, they're 3-12. Again, correlation doesn't mean causation. I've watched a ton of baseball and softball. I know hitting 1 home run does not decide the game, but to your point, there is a level of momentum that comes from hitting said home run that correlates to the rest of the outcome of that game. And for this team, they like you said, they hit in bunches. The home runs on the Thursday night matchup with Jack State, they hit 3. Like they don't know. So they have nights where they have 1 or 2, but they hit 3 on Thursday night and rolled with ease, in my opinion, on that Thursday night game, and didn't have any production on Friday. And then obviously Saturday was equally as slow. But obviously, if the power bats are going, this team they will move. They'll make some moves. Hopefully, again, upward trajectory with them going into Conference USA tournament. So. Last weekend there, again at home, 2 weeks now against UTEP. Noah, let's turn our attention over to baseball. They're kind of in the similar boat. They are also fighting for their lives to get into the Conference USA tournament. Baseball is different. They get 8 teams in, so you have a little bit more leeway. But right as we sit right now, they're not in there. But they've got much like the Lady Raiders, they've got their second top 25 win. They beat WKU on the road this last weekend in Bowling Green. Their first home loss of the year for the Toppers. I'm glad it could have happened to any program better, but baseball is kind of in that same boat, fighting for their life. They have the tools. They're fighting a lot more injuries, but they have the tools. They're just not putting it together right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough series to go into. They did lose the series, but got a good win in the second game of the series. Like I said, a top 25 ranked team. It would feel great to beat WKU in the series, but I do think taking that game gives them, a good outlook. And they're not too far back from the eighth spot, but I don't think they'd be satisfied with eighth. I mean, they're 2 games behind Liberty with, I think, 12 conference games left in the year. A lot could change. But I think it's going to be a tough end, but I don't think they have the hardest schedule left. And similar, you just got to ride momentum. They got to put together something and just get going.
We were when I was speaking with Jay Standridge, who is the SID, talking about their schedule that they've experienced. They're much like the ladies or the softball team, where they've had to play the harder competition first, and it's gotten a lot easier for them. Again, they've gotten past the wave that is Western Kentucky now, a team that has surprised a lot, but they are also in Las Cruces this weekend as they're facing the Aggies, and then they will return home for 2 straight series at home against Jack State and then Sam Houston. Jack State, another surprise team, but Sam Houston has been the worst team in Conference USA by a long shot. They are a very bad team. So, again, in a perfect world, you get a sweep there. You've got to find a way to probably win 4 of those 6 matchups in Las Cruces and at home against Jack State. I will go back to that same question I had with the softball. What's got to happen down this stretch for you to feel comfortable to slide into that 8th spot?
I would say, for a win total guess, I would say 8 out of 12 would put them pretty comfortable. I think it is doable. You were talking about the schedule they've got left. We also look at some of the other schedules. I mean, they're pretty much right now solely chasing Liberty to get that 8th spot. Like I said, they want to go higher than that, I'm sure. But Liberty has to take on Dallas Baptist at some point, which is a good team in Conference USA, and among other opponents. And same thing with softball. As much as you want to win yourself, you've also got to rely on some other people. Like we mentioned the FIU WKU series. It's going to be some interesting math and trying to move up Conference USA for softball. Maybe FIU wins 1 out of 2, WKU wins 2 wins. I'm not sure if you really root for WKU in many scenarios, but you're going to need to rely on other teams to try to move up. And I think winning 8 out of 12 would be pretty good for the Blue Raiders.
They're really feeling it on the mound for the most part. Drew Horn has been absolutely electric. Will Chandler Alderman make the return that we saw of him last weekend against Louisiana Tech through a 9-inning complete games? But he's lost 4 of his last 5 starts, including this Saturday matchup against Western Kentucky. 13.4 ERA in those 4 losses. A guy that was an All-CUSA freshman last year just hasn't had what it has taken this year to push this team over the top, especially here as conference play has picked up. He was great in the non-conference slate, but so far it's been tough going for him. You watch a lot of softball, watch a lot of baseball. A guy like this, they call it the sophomore slump, which is more of a term used for hitters, but he's kind of experiencing that now as a pitcher, and a lot more weight is on his shoulders because you have the injury to Trace Phillips, your Friday starter, so you're really having to retool what you can do with your bullpen there with the absence of an MLB draft pick potential with Trace Phillips, even though he's injured. Maybe fingers crossed he comes back for another year next year. But with pitching in general, I talk about Chandler, a guy that, again, had great numbers last year. And again, you have to kind of reinvent yourself. Maybe, I don't know. I've never played at this level, but at some point you got to think, get back to what you were doing. And we saw a lot of that last week with La Tech in that 9-inning game. That was a guy that we saw last year throwing complete games, limiting the contact, not a strikeout guy, but he just looked cool, confident in himself last week, and it kind of disappeared. And maybe it's a competition, but you got to have that guy back in these last 3 series.
I just think a lot of it, I mean, it's been a tough stretch of games, and sometimes it's just baseball. It's how baseball goes. I mean, against WKU, that's a good team. They caught momentum in a game, as they often do. And it's just, when you're facing a tough schedule, you get into a tough stretch. And it's something you got to bounce back from. Like I said, we got plenty of games left in the season. He's still got time to move back to where we've seen him before. And I think it's just a tough stretch right now. And I know the potential he has. I think the team does, the fans do, all that stuff. And he's a good player. He's going to continue to be a good player.
Of course, pitching that contact is what did him well there in La Tech. So hopefully, again, we see that in these final 3 stretches. Well, Noah, I appreciate you coming on, talking some spring sports with us. Of course, you're a treat there on ESPN Plus, covering the Lady Raiders. You're great with it. Anything else? I know you do pictures as well. You're a photographer for Athletic Communications. What else? Is there anything big on the horizon for Noah Freeman?
Right now, I'm just trying to settle down. I mean, the heat of the semester with school's picking up and work's kind of slowing down into the season for softball coming. So, you know, not as many broadcasts and a lot of sports are ending, so not as many photos. So trying to get school done, of course, and then figure out what I'm going to do for fun in the summer, but also just enjoying some Thunder basketball in the playoffs right now, of course.
Of course, yeah. It looks like you've got a lot of Thunder basketball to enjoy coming up. So look forward to that NBA playoff picture. But of course, no, I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. We look forward to hearing your voice again in that final series that's coming up next weekend against UTEP, and of course, you broadcasting games in the future. So Noah, once again, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
And once again, thank you to Noah for joining us, and for you listening today. If you're not already, make sure that you are following us on all of our social media accounts, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, @Blue Raider Pod. If you're listening to us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, getting closer and closer to that 100 mark. And I appreciate if you take the time to do that. Until next time, we've got Brett Von Dolan of the baseball program that's going to be joining us next week. We've got Connor Smith talking baseball, Shane Pickering going to be talking to us about football transfer portal spring season. So a lot of good stuff coming in next week's episode. Make sure you don't miss that one. And until next time, go Blue.